Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Financial Commute. I'm your host, Chris Galeski, joined by Chief Compliance Officer Menachem. Menachem, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Good to be back.
We're here to talk about probably one of your favorite topics, cybersecurity, AI, fraud, all of the crazy things that are happening out there to, clients and people. It's just such a scary world.
Sure. We're going to try to put everybody in a good mood this morning or whenever you're listening to this.
Well, I think, there's a lot of people that always ask the questions, hey, how are you protecting us? Or what can I do to protect myself? And we're hearing more and more stories of people's bank accounts getting compromised. Even, some people have heard stories about, mailing a check to the IRS and it getting taken at the post office and washed clean and fraud being done that way. But, protecting yourself online is a very important thing to do because we are all very vulnerable, especially if we're not using complex passwords and different passwords for all these different accounts or even changing them from time to time. I could only imagine how vulnerable people get even through the phishing and email scams that have gotten pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely, we see it in the news almost every day now, and it can get kind of scary, the level of sophistication that some of these frauds or scams we're seeing out there. The good news is, I think you mentioned there's a few sort of good ways or good steps that people can take to go a long way to protect themselves. You mentioned passwords. That's kind of the number one step to take, is making sure that you're using complex, unique passwords. That's a big one, right? You don't want to reuse your same password across a bunch of different platforms, and then if it gets compromised in one place, now you're exposing your banking or other credentials. So
yeah, because likely our personal information is sort of already out there because of the Blue Cross Blue Shield hack or AT&T or whatever, right? Yeah. But it's really, if your information is out there and then they have access to your password, that's where you're really vulnerable. So let's talk a little bit more about, protecting yourself from a password, because people say complex password, but now with AI and large language models, we're hearing that a 7, 8, potentially even 9-digit password is not enough. So complex means how many characters?
Yeah, I think what we're saying, to be conservative, we tell people at least 15, maybe even 20, which seems extreme. And I think the only way to really handle that is through some technology that we like and we recommend. It's called a password manager. And what that is essentially you remember one password, a very complex password that you hopefully don't lose or get compromised, and that protects your vault of all your passwords. And it can automatically generate a unique, complex password for each account that you use. And this way, each of your accounts is kind of segregated online, where if one gets exposed, it doesn't expose the keys to the kingdom, so to speak.
And so those are, technology like Keeper or 1Password. And those are for us to be able to use to not only get very complex passwords for all the websites, but make one very complex password that we just need to remember. So it might be a heavy lift at the onset to kind of go through all those websites and banking information and usernames and passwords, but to go reset everything, then you've got it and you're more protected that way.
Yeah, and for those Apple fans out there, I don't know if you've seen, Apple just released their new iOS platform has a password manager app included as well. So that's something that Apple users can definitely take advantage of, hopefully coming soon.
I'm glad that you said that. I mean, having a 1Password or a password manager can help save time and energy and help better protect you. I know in dealing with family members that, are aging. So my grandmother's 90 and she clicks on every link that she shouldn't, and she's always being asked to change her password. Going to something like 1Password or Keeper helps us manage that remotely from always having to be there. So I know that that's even helpful from that standpoint too.
Yeah, that's great.
What's your take on dual-factor authentication?
Yeah, that's another security measure that we definitely recommend. As much as possible, any account that's got your sensitive information should have dual-factor. The way to think about that is, you want to combine something with something you have, right? So your password is something you know, but then you also have your cell phone or whatever authentication method you're using. So that makes your account that much more secure if you're combining those two methods.
Yeah, like even Schwab, Fidelity, and a lot of other companies that we deal with, they've been leveraging these dual factor authentications. Like, I'm going to send you a code, enter this, 6-digit code. I'm going to send it to you by text or email, because they want to verify that that's the person that they're talking to. Some clients recently, and we've heard stories about, people's voice and or image might have been compromised, leading to fraud. I think there was some fake version of a CFO that was on a Zoom call and verbally authorized a transfer, and there's scary stories around that. Some of the things that people need to do to better protect themselves is make sure that their privacy settings for a number of those websites or social media websites is protected, so that way it doesn't become public domain. We've also heard stories about, people getting elaborate schemes through phone calls that, tend to scare you. What's your advice for people that kind of get drawn in, whether it's a phishing email or a phone call that turns into a scam?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is trust your gut. If something seems like it's kind of off or weird, just hang up, call back whoever purports to be calling you, call them back on a known number. But really, I think we're so used to, thinking intellectually, sometimes we forget to trust our visceral reaction. And if something seems strange, like, trust that gut instinct that you have. And then, we mentioned, like, call back somebody on a known number. Don't click on links. Hopefully we learn that lesson through all these phishing tests or scams that we've been through. Just making sure that if something seems off, it probably is. And so just trusting that known information that you have.
Yeah. I mean, these phishing emails, these scam emails are starting to look very, very real. So we have to be careful, hover over the email address, make sure that it looks like a legit email address. If you're still concerned, make a phone call instead of just replying or clicking on links. I know lately I've been answering the phone much different than I used to. I used to answer the phone, Morton Wealth, Chris Galeski, because I get lots of different phone calls. Yeah. But now I'm so worried about protecting my name and my voice and who I am. When I get a phone call from an unknown number, I just answer hello, or I'm quiet for the first few seconds to try to see if it's a scammer. We also wanted to talk about some of the things that we're doing here as an organization to better protect our clients. So obviously, we've got Schwab and Fidelity that have their dual factor authentication when we're, dealing with clients there. We also have dual factor authentication on all of our different platforms. So when we're accessing client-sensitive data, we need to have our phone nearby to access those websites. Yep. What are some other things that we're doing to help protect our clients here?
Sure. So a lot of it is behind the scenes, working with our IT partners. We're running tests and scans in the background to make sure that our internal network is secure. We also do a lot of research and diligence on our counterparties, so vendors that we work with that might have access to our client information. We want to ask them a lot of questions to make sure that they've got the right controls in place, right? If we're sharing sensitive information with them, we want to make sure that it's not exposed through their systems. And then the biggest piece, I think, is just our employee training. You can have the best secure networks in the world, and all it takes is human error to, let something get past you. And so we're continually training people. We do a lot of phishing testing where we'll send out an email that kind of looks a little fishy, and if somebody clicks on it, then they get a little mark that says you've been caught. You might have to go through some extra training. But really, that's sort of the behind the scenes testing, researching and diligence on our counterparties, and then just the training, continuously trying to stay on top of the developments in this space.
I know we're taking it very seriously. We get alerts and notifications when clients are transferring money or wires are being sent, and we do as much as possible to make sure that clients are protected, and we're only linked to bank accounts that they have authorized. We're still recommending, though, that people go to the TransUnion and Equifax and put a freeze on their credit to best protect them. That way, no new lines of credit can be opened up.
I think so. I think that's just a good sort of safeguard to have in place. Just that'll make sure that like you said, no credit cards, you'll find out real quick if someone's trying to get access to your credit or your personal profile.
Yeah, and as this world that we have kind of gets more complex with AI and protecting ourselves online, we're continuing to look for, business parties or people that we can partner with to help protect ourselves and our clients better. And so we're looking into service offerings like that. There's a lot going on in that space right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just trying to, stay ahead of the game and sort of keep abreast of all the developments. But yeah, definitely looking into, some ways that we can help our clients with cybersecurity on their personal line.
Menachem, thank you so much for joining us today. Just to kind of summarize, I know we talked a lot, but just to summarize, because not all of our clients are forced to change their passwords as often as we are in the financial services industry. Take a look at one of those password managers, whether it's Keeper, 1Password, or if you have a new Apple device and their new password manager. Try leveraging that, but make sure to go into all of your various accounts and get a more complex password, something longer than 7, 8, or 9 characters, because you may be at risk there. So you recommend what, 15, 20 characters?
Yeah, we said 15, 20 characters if you can do it.
And that's why a password manager might make your life a little bit easier, because you won't have to remember all of those different ones. You'll just have to remember the complex one for the password manager. Some cybersecurity experts actually recommend having a separate email address just used for your personal banking. So that way you're not using your personal email address. That way it's best protected. Please be careful with any scams or phishing emails. It's getting very, very good out there. If there's ever any doubt, just stop what you're doing. Call us, call 911, call somebody to better protect yourself. And then as best as possible, if you're moving money, please verify those instructions verbally. So thank you again so much.
That's great. Thanks, Chris.